Hi, kids. Do you like violence? Want to see me stick 9-inch nails through each one of my eyelids? Well, too bad, because my name is not Slim Shady. What my name is, actually, that's not relevant. What this is, though, is a YouTube video. My first, in fact. Now, if you do happen to be a fan of violence, and also a kid at heart, then you're gonna like this video. The 90s were something of a dark time for comic books. A dark age, if you will. Yeah. Comic readers were aging and maturing, something that both comic book writers and companies didn't fail to notice. So they attempted to change with the times, and their readers. They'd been doing this for years, of course, but that gradual shift came to a bit of a drastic point during the 1990s. See, comics in the 80s, they really pushed the boundaries of what a comic could be and do. In the 90s, however, creators realized they were now free to take comics to new and exciting places. And they did. They also, however, took comics to some very weird and very strange places. Basically, stories and characters took a sharp left turn from the whiter than white bread four-color bastions of goodness and moral authority that they used to be, generally speaking. What we got instead were dark, complex, bloody, and generally gritty everything, with a big focus on sex, violence, and blatant edginess. Women became stick-thin boob and butt holders with so much hair that honestly, they would need superpowers to keep their heads up. Men became, well, men in the 90s tended to be built like each and every one of them were descended from the Hulk. If your bicep was not the size of a car window, you were not a male character of importance in the 90s. You had names like Bloodshot, Youngblood, Adam X the Extreme, Night Thrasher, Deathmate, Deathshot, Deathstroke, Lady Deathstrike, Gunfire, Nightblade, Razor Sharp, and Goddang Holocaust. During the 90s, these names were par for the course, and honestly, these are just the ones I remembered without looking them up. I honestly thought I imagined some of them, but no, they're real. Real edgy. In the 90s, there was this aesthetic that dominated a lot of mainstream comics. It emphasized things like leather jackets, pouches, gritted teeth, lots of spit, and badly drawn, ridiculously over-muscled heroes. Many characters got really terrible makeovers, designed to make them more extreme. Superman became electric blue for some reason. Spider-Man was briefly replaced by the Scarlet Spider. Doctor Strange started dressing like a hippie. Dr. Fate became an angry mercenary called Fate. Guy Gardner became Warrior. Fantastic Four was joined by the Fantastic Force. West Coast Avengers became Forceworks. Justice League was joined by Extreme Justice. New Mutants became X-Force, and so on and so fucking forth. So, you know, a teenage boy's dream. Not so much for everyone else, though. As you can imagine, a lot of the content produced during the 90s is very controversial. Now, speaking of controversy, let's get to the actual topic of discussion. One of my favorite comics ever. Ladies, gentlemen, and that confusing Technicolor rainbow in between, I present to you So in 1996, the year Zoomers began, a series was launched by Dark Horse Comics. Written and illustrated by a man named Jason Pearson, the series was chock full of blood, violence, cursing, and overt sexual content. The name of that series? Body Bags. Now, this book has been described in many ways. Shocking, for one, despicable for another. So before I get into the plot of this comic, I want to let you know something. Here is a disclaimer. There are no good guys in this story. There are no good people in this story. Everyone is either racist, sexist, sociopathic, psychopathic, a violent criminal, a murderer, or an accomplice to one at the very least. This book is not for the prude or the faint of heart. In fact, a direct quote from the author to the audience as to how they should take the book literally states, "You need to be able to take the heat." This book is not for the weak. So you might start to understand why I like it so much. So now that that's over with, let's actually get to it. The basic premise of body bags is a bit hard for some people to understand. No, actually they understand it. They just get really uptight about it sometimes. The easiest way I've ever been able to explain it to anyone is, well, let me just try and explain it to you. So, have you ever heard of Luc Besson's The Professional? In which a quiet, stoic assassin played by Jean Reno takes in an orphan 12-year-old named Matilda, played by Natalie Portman, under his wing as she demands to be trained in the art of assassing after her family is murdered? No? Okay, well that's exactly what happens in The Professional. Anyway, the main difference is that the father figure in Body Bags is starkly different from Jean Reno's Leon. For one, Leon isn't built like he juggles fridges for fun. For another, Leon is quiet and composed, not belligerent and aggressive.
Please. Now the security shot.
Little side note, if you haven't watched The Professional yet, I'm recommending you do. It's really good.
The second goes high out the chest. Aim for the heart and larynx. There. Right there. The second finishes him. Never.
For the daughter figures, well, I guess the issue with sexualization is a commonality, but, well, it's a bit more blatant in the case of Body Bags, if you couldn't already tell. So yeah, just think of Body Bags as kind of a mix of The Professional and also, you know, Kick-Ass, you know? With Big Daddy and Hit Girl? Yeah, you know what I mean.
Commercial break.
I'm gonna be entirely honest with you, 110%. That gumball clip, just for shits and giggles, I'm very bored right now, and probably a little bit sleep deprived. It's 5:30 a.m. on a Monday morning. I'm struggling. Sue me. So the focus of this video is going to be Body Bags Father's Day, a collection of the original 4 issues of the comic series, reprinted and remastered. Body Bags Father's Day is set in the near future, a world where bounty hunting is a legitimate trade, and casual blatant violence is pretty much the norm, especially when you have a government license to carry out murders and kidnappings. Those who have these licenses, these government-sanctioned bounty officials, are referred to as body baggers, people who can engage in said activities by chasing after bounties posted by the government or private citizens, which is kind of insane if you think about it. Anyway, the location of the story is set in some grimy but still colorful and near-future version of Atlanta, Georgia. The actual name of the city, though, is Terminus, Georgia, which, interestingly enough, was the original name for the city of Atlanta. So apparently in this world, it was either never renamed or they went with the first name. Whatever the name, future Atlanta just seems like a worse version of Batman Beyond's Gotham City. It's a crazy sort of world that features a whole lot of colorful bounty hunters performing a whole lot of contract killing. One character in particular, the main character of Body Bags, is a man named Mac Clownface Delgado. Half of the Body Bags duo, Clownface is a roughly 7-foot-tall, near superhuman badass, literally built like the Hulk, which is par for the course when it comes to 90s characters. The man also happens to be a smiley-faced, mask-wearing, stoically gruff sociopathic bounty hunter, who doesn't so much seem to love violence, but thinks of graphic and brutal assault the same way a normal man would view a handshake. He engages in most of this violence without using guns, by the way, leaving that to his physical lessers, which is basically everybody else in this world who is not a superhuman cyborg, and even then it's kinda doubtful. In fact, the man is so superhumanly strong and skilled that his partner states, Mac learned how to throw a knife at a velocity that makes its impact like a mortar round. He's the only one on Earth who has that ability. You don't need a gun when you can do that. Our introduction to Mac Delgado is him first punching a woman bloody and unconscious with a single blow, a woman who literally does nothing to him. That is then followed up by the man performing what he describes as an abortion by shoving his giant knife into the belly of a heavily pregnant woman. None of that is an exaggeration, by the way. It is literally something that happens in the first 3 pages of the comic. Even I wasn't expecting that, and I knew what I was getting into. Raw, visceral, and brutal is the best way to describe Clownface. The man has no time for laughs, despite his deceptive mask and nickname. His child, however, is drastically different from him. As the first issue continues, we are introduced to the daughter of Clownface, Panda Carmen Maria Delgado, a 14-and-a-half-year-old girl with a chest comparable to her father's bulk. Overly zealous, overly voluptuous, and overly violent, Panda is actually based on one of Jason Pearson's childhood classmates, in physique and attitude, so do with that information what you will. Anyway, due to her mom having died of breast cancer, Panda chooses to return to her father after roughly a decade of not having seen him. Her primary reason is because she wishes to follow his line of work as a body bagger, basically a futuristic mix of public and private contract killer and bounty hunter. As you'd expect, Panda is in it for the fun and excitement, and she acts much like a hyperactive teenage girl would, albeit with a penchant for violence and willful murder, exceeding most, if not nearly all, 14-year-old girls. I assume most girls aren't really a fan of Glocks, MG3 machine guns, or 12-gauge shotguns. Then again, my sister has me wondering sometimes. Not the point though. Anyway, our introduction to Little Miss Badass begins on a plane and continues with her on the streets as she makes her way through the city of Terminus. On the plane, she is slapped on the ass by some rich jerk who ties into the story in a relatively minor way later on. Then again on the streets, she is propositioned by a manic preacher who promises her salvation if she does a favor for him in the bathroom, and then he strikes her on the head from behind when she refuses him. In all her initial interactions with other characters, Panda is portrayed as irreverent and just as prone to violence as her massive father, although in her case it's actually justified, at least in the first 2 cases. Honestly, I really can't think of a much more appropriate response to actual and attempted sexual assault on a minor than a well-deserved beating from the minor themselves. In addition to their relation to violence, both father and daughter are superhumanly skilled in their own ways. Although for Panda, it's not really explained why she's so agile or able to handle so many ballistic weapons without any training. It's a minor issue, given that the series clearly runs off coolness and gritty style. So if you're actually annoyed at that, this book is probably not for you. Enjoy getting filtered by minor details. As mentioned before, both father and daughter have their issues with violence, and both have a habit of their angry green eyes filling up a panel right before they engage in an act of incredible violence, sometimes off-screen. Clownface and Panda's relationship is largely aggressive, which is probably not helped by the fact that they don't really know each other. It definitely doesn't make Clownface feel any better that his teenage daughter chooses to dress in a way that cannot be described as anything but hooker chic. Like, it's not even an expensive escort outfit, just a prostitute costume, pretty much. When she doesn't have on pants that ride very, very low, or a shirt that doesn't even come close to meeting her belly button, she's wearing her body bagger costume, a skin-tight sweater with a super short pleated cheerleader skirt that shows her panties even when she's standing perfectly still. But I digress. There are other characters that are part of the story, like Pops, Clownface's terminally ill partner in crime? Or Cisco, Clownface's boss whose gender can only be guessed at. And even the Tarantino and Scorsese crime family. But honestly, those guys are basically just window dressing compared to Panda and Clownface's origin story as a father-daughter kill squad. Our 2 sociopathic heroes are the real draw, and that's why they're on the cover. Anyway, Jason Pearson's cartoonishly death-loving world is just the type where a 14-year-old mass-murdering bounty hunter in an outfit that would be considered ridiculous in a porno fits right in, without barely a single person within the world even blinking at the insanity. Truthfully, this book has something for the whole family. Sadistic violence, racism, homophobia, misogyny, a father beating his daughter, and just general good times all around. I joke, but all in all, Body Bag's Father's Day is a beautiful story. Panda simply wants her father's love and respect, wishing nothing more than to be right by his side as he sets out on jobs that are just literal murder but legal-ish. On the other hand, Mac just wants his daughter to be safe, his protective attitude coming out as belligerent in the face of his daughter's rebellious peak. However, the Hispanic father-daughter duo do come to terms despite their bad attitudes, both of them clearly having love for one another. In fact, the first 2 issues of this family-friendly tale end with a large page of Panda asleep in the hospital after a firefight for her life. A gun in hand is a gift from her father. Her trigger discipline could definitely use some work though. Definitely. But yeah, there is a reason that this book is literally considered the most controversial comic of the 1990s, which is a high bar considering. Incredible work here, Mr. Pearson. Incredible work. In conclusion, another thing I love about this series is the author himself. Jason Pearson is not one to shy away from negative feedback when it comes to his work, an admirable trait. The man is well aware of the world he has created and the characters he gave birth to. In fact, he has leaned into it so much that the sort of reviews that would have some creators struggling is what he proudly posts on the back of his books. One review in particular, the one on the back of this book, states, and I quote, "A despicable man monster is visited by his slut of a daughter. They spend quality time together, stabbing and shooting despicable people. Ugly and violent, this technically well-drawn and written comic is moral garbage." Amazing. Applause-worthy. Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Once again, I present to you Body Bags.